Video games can be such an incredible outlet for creativity when they are made with genuine passion, but these days the only thing game publishers seem to be creative about is monetization schemes. We have seen the gaming industry employ a number of questionable and distasteful tactics throughout the years, like pre-order bonuses, season passes, deluxe editions, shoddy DLCs, and of course, the dreaded microtransactions and loot boxes. More recently, companies like EA have been strong-arming players into subscribing to their services by offering subscribers early access to their games, or I should say that they have been punishing non-subscribers by delaying their access. It's been disheartening to see how much these business models have evolved over the last decade as game companies keep pushing the envelope further, inch by inch. But another up-and-coming scheme that isn't being talked about enough is the idea of in-game ads. Now, product placement is nothing new in the realm of video games, and if you have played a lot of mobile games, then you'll be familiar with the occasional ad pop-up, though ads can be somewhat tolerated in that scenario if we're dealing with free games or apps. However, like with any kind of business model, there are lines companies can cross that can turn monetization schemes into something unreasonable and egregious, and there is no better example of this than Street Fighter V. I don't have to tell you how disastrous this game's launch was, in large part due to Capcom deciding that they would release the game in a state and with a range of content that could only be acceptable if it were in early access. The character roster was woefully lacking to be sold separately via DLC and season passes, online features and single-player modes were missing, and the general consensus was that the game was intentionally rushed to launch unfinished. One incident even involved an update that made PCs vulnerable to malware, if you'll believe it. Essentially, Capcom has been employing the tried-and-true sell now, fix later method that's been plaguing the AAA sector of the games industry for years now, a method that only seems to be getting worse these days. But as if Street Fighter V didn't have enough of a shady history, Capcom goes ahead and shoves ads into the game in a way that disrupts the game's artistic merits. The following information comes from an official press release published by Capcom on December 6, 2018. The primary focus of this announcement was that Street Fighter V would be playable for free from December 11th to December 18th on PlayStation 4 and PC, with this free trial granting access to 16 characters, arcade mode, versus mode, challenges, and training mode. However, below that, something else that Capcom snuck in was the fact that something called sponsored content would be introduced into Street Fighter V Arcade Edition starting from December 11th. The statement reads as follows: sponsored content will be introduced into Street Fighter V Arcade Edition on December 11th. Sponsored content will be displayed in several locations in-game to remind you about costumes, bundles, and the Capcom Pro Tour. When sponsored content is enabled, players can obtain additional fight money in ranked and casual matches. These bonuses come with an upper limit. Here are the places where you'll see sponsored content. Costumes, ad style. Every character will have an ad style costume where the sponsored content will appear somewhere on their clothing or model. Loading ads. A sponsor will appear in the versus screen before a battle. This will not affect loading screen times. Stage ads. Some tournament stages feature a sponsor like the Ring of Power. Below that are two screenshots that showcase what this stuff looks like, and man oh man is it an abomination. When initial rumblings about these ads began to spread, many thought that they would be implemented subtly enough to tolerate, but as you can see right here, these ads are lazily plastered all over character designs like piss-poor Photoshop jobs. Here's how they look like in a match, not much better as you can see, with stickers for sponsored content prominently visible on various facets of character models, as well as on multiple areas of a stage, like the big sticker on the floor here or the screens in the background. This stuff is just so in your face that it genuinely mars the overall aesthetic and completely takes you out of the game. A few more examples can be found compiled here on this article by website Kotaku, starting with this one which showcases how Guile's American flag tattoos have instead been replaced by sponsored content. Below that is Dhalsim, who not only wears this ugly, out-of-place belt with an ad on it, but also has his skull necklace desecrated with a sponsored logo. This article specifically noted that this necklace is comprised of child skulls honoring the young people in his village who succumbed to plague. With that implication in mind, Capcom shoving sponsored stickers on one of the skulls makes this alteration particularly contentious for fans of the series. One more example is Urien, who also wears a similar belt, albeit a much bigger one with sponsored content plastered on it, and he also now wears shoulder sleeves with the same stickers as well. But perhaps the most popular example of how these ads genuinely mar the game's creative integrity is how they ruin Akuma's famous super, which normally ends with the character's back towards the camera while the Japanese character for Heaven flashes a crimson red. With the ads turned on, however, what players will see instead is a giant freaking sponsored logo covering it up, butchering the final moments of one of the most iconic attacks in Street Fighter and in gaming history. Furthermore, as hinted by Capcom's announcement, people have noticed that ads can also play after selecting characters, with a video from this Twitter user showcasing how before entering training mode, he got an ad that marketed the game's various costume bundles that are being sold separately. You might have noticed that supported by title card at the beginning, which might as well be a precursor for the day when it reads sponsored by as third-party companies' advertisements are shoved in. It shouldn't come as a major surprise that fans of Street Fighter adamantly expressed their disappointment over Capcom's latest decision on forums and social media. Just as Street Fighter V seemed to be getting back on its feet, Capcom pulls this and flushes down the toilet what semblance of goodwill they've built up since the title's unceremonious launch. Now, Capcom did emphasize that sponsored content can be turned off, stating the following: "If you'd rather not see sponsored content, you can easily turn this feature off by going into Battle Settings, which will give you the following options. Sponsored Content Settings. Here you can adjust the sponsored content settings. Turn sponsored content on to receive bonus fight money in ranked and casual matches. Sponsored Display. Turning the setting on allows you to access sponsored content such as ad-style costumes. Loading and stage ads. Selecting on gives you access to stage and loading ads." While it's good to have the option to turn ads off, the caveat here is, of course, that doing so will punish players by giving them less currency. As previously mentioned, when sponsored content is enabled, players can obtain additional fight money in ranked and casual matches. For those who don't know, fight money is the in-game currency that allows players to buy everything from fighters, stages, costumes, colors, titles, to fighter profile designs. Now, from what I've heard, the disparity between what you earn with ads on versus ads off isn't so great that players will suffer drastically if ads are turned off, but that doesn't change the fact that leaving Capcom's latest decision unscrutinized sets up a dangerous precedent. Sure, aside from how sponsored content mar various aspects of the game's visuals, the current implementation doesn't outright ruin the game or anything, but that's only because Capcom is merely testing the waters. For now, the penalty for turning ads off seem negligible enough, and the only types of ads we are seeing are those related to Capcom and Street Fighter, in this case the upcoming Capcom Pro Tour. But you can imagine how giving Capcom so much as an inch on this would eventually result in penalties for turning off ads becoming more severe over time, how Capcom might expand their sponsored content to feature all kinds of different brands from third-party companies, and how these ads could be plastered even more egregiously than they already are. This is Capcom setting up for what they hope future games will look like, so even if it doesn't seem as bad now, it is important to spot the tumor and deal with it sooner rather than later before it grows into an unstoppable cancer. That's how microtransactions and loot boxes became what they are today. Once companies saw how lucrative they could be off of the success of a few select titles, there was a big rush towards them, after which they began pushing the boundaries little by little, and it was only after EA got overzealous with Battlefront 2 that people finally noticed just how far beyond the line game companies have gotten throughout the years and began pushing back. I guarantee you that the same thing will occur with in-game ads if we don't make it loud and clear right here, right now, that this sort of blatant marring of a game's artistic integrity for the sake of monetization is simply not acceptable. If Capcom ends up succeeding with this endeavor, other companies will no doubt follow suit, try to hop on the bandwagon and attempt to get their own piece of the pie, and soon enough we may find many other AAA games and franchises featuring ads in some way, shape, or form, in the same manner that microtransactions have become normalized. Now, some time has passed since ads were implemented into Street Fighter V to near universal disdain, but Capcom finally responded via a tweet posted on December 17th, 2018, though I cannot say anyone will be pleased with their statement, which reads, quote, "We value and thank our community for providing feedback on the new sponsored content feature added to Street Fighter V Arcade Edition this week. We will continue collecting everyone's feedback to consider how we can improve this new feature for players in the future. Yoshi Ono, Street Fighter executive producer." Wow, talk about a boilerplate PR statement that would bring a tear to EA and Activision's eye. This response is basically a whole lot of nothing, featuring your typical "we're listening to feedback" empty reassurance, akin to what Bungie has constantly spouted in the early days of Destiny 2. It's quite simple, Capcom. Players don't want to hear about plans for improvements on in-game ads, they want you to take the ads out, period, especially when we're talking about a product that charges a premium entry fee. If Street Fighter V were a free-to-play title, then perhaps players would be willing to be more tolerant, but the game was originally sold at full price when it was unfinished, after which much of its missing content was sold separately through DLCs, season passes, and other forms of monetization. The game's general history and its overall business model are bad enough as it is, not to mention the game's clearly got enough revenue streams, so there's simply no excuse for Capcom to add another monetization scheme, especially one that's so visually jarring and plants such a dangerous seed for the future of an already compromised medium. These are one man's perspective anyway. I'd love to hear what your take is on Capcom introducing ads to Street Fighter V in the comments below. With that, I would like to end this news update. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoy my content and would like to support this channel directly, consider donating on Patreon. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.